KAZM Sedona.
Good morning, Sedona. It is Saturday, June 15th, 2024, and this is Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks, Red Rock Country's radio magazine, heard every Saturday at this time on KAZM 106.5 FM and 780 AM Mellow Mountain Radio, and live streamed at mellowmountainradio.com. I'm your host, Stephen Hanks, and every Saturday morning since we launched in early February, you've been listening, hopefully, to a radio show that each week explores all the fascinating aspects of life in Sedona and the Verde Valley and engages with intriguing personalities from all walks of life in our area. Today's show and all of my shows during June are being sponsored by an outstanding Camp Verde-based insurance agent, Karen Cole of State Farm Insurance, who throughout the Verde Valley in northern Arizona protects the things you value and the people you love. Like a good neighbor, Karen and State Farm are there. My producer behind the glass is the always tremendous Ryan Thompson. How you doing,
morning.
Ryan?
Good.
Good. How you been?
Excellent. You know, like same thing every week. I'm just working away at the station.
Yeah, you were pounding it, brother.
Yeah.
Part
construction, part radio.
I know. Like you wear. I don't know. I can't even count the number of hats you wear in this place.
It's too tall.
Incredible. I know. It's like it's like the Abraham Lincoln hat.
Yeah.
It's like,
so what are you doing for Father's Day?
oh, right. It's tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of a drag that my daughter still lives in Brooklyn. You know, so she's not going to be here. I'm not going to see her. But my wife, who, as you know, my wife B, who we call
The Woman Warrior.
That's right, is taking me to the Village Chop House tonight for dinner, for Father's Day dinner.
Oh, nice.
So that's going to be cool. I haven't been there yet, and I've heard great things about that restaurant. It's owned by the guy who owns Rotten Johnny's Pizza.
Okay.
You know, so and the restaurant's great. So Ryan, when you were growing up, were you ever into archaeology and the idea of digging for artifacts?
I think a little bit. I mean, I played in the sandbox. You got to get in there, and that's like the first foray into it.
That's right. Well, every kid has that story.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a matter of how far you're going to go with the sandbox digging. So, Ryan, you know I get excited about all the themes and guests we have on Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks, but I was particularly looking forward to this one because this episode is about digging archaeology in the Verde Valley, and my guests in the studio are three people who operate the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum. But before I tell you exactly why I was jazzed about this show and introduce my guests, it's time once again for our top of the show segment, Stephen's Sedona Scene, where I tell everyone in my listening audience about some terrific events happening over the following week in Sedona and the Verde Valley. Now, I mentioned this event on last week's show, and I wanted to tell everybody about it again. This coming Wednesday, June 19th, from 2 to 4 p.m., the Sedona Public Library, in partnership with the Sustainability Alliance Environmental Justice Team, will present Celebrating Juneteenth Freedom Day. As many of you know, Juneteenth, National Independence Day, commemorating the final enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation in Texas on June 19, 1865, became a federal holiday in 2021. This will be an afternoon of remembrance as the event honors the delayed emancipation of enslaved African Americans. The program will commemorate resilience, progress, and the ongoing journey toward equality for all people, and includes a public panel discussion and Q&A featuring respected and accomplished Verde Valley residents. And one of them is my good friend Camilla Ross, who's the producer, director, playwright, and actor, and president of the Emerson Theater Collaborative that presents a number of shows every year here in Sedona and the Verde Valley. For information and questions about this event, contact sedonalibrary.org. And every few shows, I feel I need to urge you all to see some of the great films played during the week at the Sedona International Film Festival. If you haven't read about all their offerings in Kudos or the scene in the Red Rock News, check out the schedule at www.sedonafilmfestival.com. So, Ryan, you know that I've mentioned many times on the show that I spent most of my career as a magazine publisher, writer, editor, and worked on magazines about a variety of subjects. Well, it turns out that during the 90s, I found myself working on a few different magazines for kids, mostly about sports. But toward the end of the 90s, and I hate dating myself right now, I worked for a couple of years at Scholastic, editing Scholastic News for 3rd and 4th graders. You guys remember Scholastic News? Yeah, my guests are shaking their head. Yes, they've been around long enough to remember Scholastic News. It's been around for a long time. Yeah. Anyway, my wife B, who, as you heard, we call the Woman Warrior, was friends with a woman who worked at the Archaeological Institute of America, which for decades had published a magazine mainly focused on ancient archaeology. Like Rome, Egypt, Greece, etc. 25 years ago, they decided to create an archaeology magazine for kids. The Woman Warrior told her friend I'd been editing a few magazines for children, and the next thing I knew, I was asked to create a prototype for a potential publication. The Institute really liked what I came up with, and so I was suddenly the editor of Dig magazine, a bi-monthly for kids from about 8 to 13, and the magazine ended up winning a bunch of awards for educational publishing, which I'm still very proud of to this day. So for that reason, I am really thrilled to devote this show to the subject of archaeology in the Verde Valley, with the real star of this show being the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum in Camp Verde, which is into their 14th year in 2024. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. VVAC, for short, is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that solely relies on charitable donations from museum members, philanthropic foundations, and the general public. Now, on their website, you'll see that their slogan is conservation, preservation, and education. And their continuing mission is to foster a deeper understanding of the indigenous legacy in the Verde Valley through public education and preservation of significant archaeological sites and artifacts. So, Ryan, one of our guests in the studio today took the Woman Warrior and myself on a little tour of the museum on Thursday. And we got a firsthand look at what this great place has to offer. We saw beautiful murals and paintings, incredible ceramics, a collection from the Grand Canyon, a Yavapai and Apache Nation exhibit, and learned all about and saw the artwork of one of the key figures in the history of the museum, whom I guess we'll talk about. And now I want to introduce Monica Buckle, who, like me, is an ex-New Yorker, is the executive director of the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum, and she's an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is indeed.
Where the people had to run through rows and get hit with sticks.
No,
you know.
it's birthright.
No, I'll come up with it. I used to. It's the kind of word that cabaret singers in New York used after a show when they had to walk through the fans and wanting to know if they were going to tell them they liked the show or not. A gauntlet.
Yeah.
A gauntlet.
Well, it actually, Stephen, it goes back to the Dow Stroll, and so basically,
Go ahead.
it's birthright and so forth.
That's really and so anyway, but I digress. And now I probably threw myself. So I'm back on your bio. So Monica holds a master's degree in art business from Sotheby's Institute of Art and in New York, and a Bachelor of Science degree from Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. In 2023, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs appointed Monica as a commissioner. the arts. Additionally, Monica serves on the board of directors with the Mesa Verde Foundation in Colorado. The Mesa Verde National Park, which is a UNESCO World, which is pretty cool. So the man who took us on the tour is Ed Goodwin, a resident of Camp Verde. He came to the Verde Valley from Massachusetts by way of Flagstaff. That's a long walk, Ed.
It was a long.
Yeah, I mean, that's a while. Professionally, he worked as an engineer and more recently as a business owner in Flagstaff. After retiring in 2018, Ed renewed his youthful interest in archaeology by volunteering Archaeology Center since 2021. He also serves on the board of directors and is currently the board president. For Ed, as we found out Thursday, volunteering is not only enjoyable for him, but it is a responsibility. And also in the studio, Ed brought along his wife, Betty, who's professionally, she was a graphic designer for over 40 years, which I can relate to being a magazine publisher. Upon retirement, Betty began volunteering with the local national monuments and continues to volunteer at Montezuma Castle. Being able to share information with the visitors and increase their understanding of the people that built the structure is very rewarding for her. Betty has been serving as a docent at the Archaeology Center since 2021, shortly before they opened in their new facility. She also helps out in the office with mailing and membership requests, and I'm sure a lot of other things that aren't listed here.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what usually happens
Yeah.
with the volunteers. So Monica, I want to start with you. Tell our listeners what the Archaeology Museum is all about in Camp Verde, and what kind of archaeology you specialize in.
Well, first and foremost, Stephen and also Ryan, thank you for having Ed, Betty, and myself on this morning.
It's our pleasure.
It's wonderful to help further promote the good work that we do, since we're mostly a volunteer-driven organization, and we have an extremely active board president. Thus he's here on a Saturday morning, so thank you, Ed. And so there's nothing like VVAC in the entire region. It's phenomenal. Not only do we have an immense ancestral Hopi artifact collection, we work directly with the Hopi Preservation Cultural Office, and it's an immense honor to have these objects in our stewardship. And it's something we do not take lightly. Everything is held to the highest museum standards and collection care, and the volunteers who work within the repository, which is separate from the museum, but still in the same 11,000 square foot new facility we have. It's just something that we very much take seriously. And the museum itself, from the moment you walk into the lobby, you're greeted with this welcoming mural that was done by Dwayne, and a fabulous Hopi artist. He does murals up in the city of Flagstaff. He's doing a mural currently for Tawaki Inn. That's the Hopi tribe's new hotel in Clarkdale, right adjacent to Tuzagoot. So they have their grand opening Monday, July 1st. So he's doing murals for them. So we have, fabulous award-winning artists in our space, and it's a custom mural. Once you go into that, then you go into our museum gallery spaces. We have a special place currently where we have a Grand Canyon exhibit, and I'll have Betty speak about that in a bit. We have fine art galleries, archaeology galleries, an archaeoastronomy gallery. My predecessor, Kenzel, whom most people know of here in Sedona, his specialty is archaeoastronomy. He was the first modern day person to research and document and then publish the findings of the solar and lunar calendar sites here in the Verde Valley, such as the Crane petroglyph site.
I just, not to interrupt you, but Ed will verify this. When we got to that room, I was like taken aback to see something about astronomy in an archaeology center.
Yes, and the two are so interconnected, and this is something that as a museum we love to tell the public, is that not only the Hopi but our neighbors Yavapai Apache Nation to the museum We have a gallery for them as well, but everything is so intertwined, the cosmos and everything here in the physical. So it's advanced technology.
Yeah.
People have preconceived notions of how indigenous peoples lived here in the Americas. So it's wonderful that we have this special gallery to really feature the advanced technologies of our indigenous friends and the modern day descendants.
Yeah. So, Monica, I want to talk as much as we can about the museum, but
Yes.
I'm kind of interested in how somebody like you came to this job.
Yes.
I know you were in New York.
Yes.
We talked about that on Thursday, and then you end up here and you're executive director of an archaeology museum focused on Native American artifacts. How does that happen?
Well, you had mentioned my tribal affiliation, Cherokee Nation. So my people are everywhere, not only residing in the Cherokee Nation, which is in northeastern Oklahoma. So there's a big Cherokee contingency in New York and everything. I'm actually from Connecticut, but would commute
So
into
you're
the
actually
city.
Native American blood in you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I-
I'm an enrolled member of the tribe.
I guess that's what that means. If you're an enrolled member, it means you.
Yes, yes. So for me, it's been my life's work to further promote
That's great.
Native American culture, contemporary artists, as well as the advanced technologies and so forth, and to be an advocate for tribal sovereignty.
That's great.
So working in Manhattan and everything was wonderful because there's so much fabulous contemporary art in New York, as you know,
Sure.
and fabulous Native American, First Nation, South American artists coming in to do work. And I worked for the American Indian Community House. It's the oldest Native-run nonprofit in New York State. So I was their public relations coordinator, and we used to do site-specific installations on Governor's Island, a wonderful nonprofit. And then, like most everyone, COVID had a huge effect, especially in the Northeast. But I was lucky enough to have connections here in Arizona. I've done so much work with Tucson Museum of Art for their exhibits and so forth, and several places in New Mexico, and of course for
Right.
Mesa Verde National Park. So it was wonderful that I had the opportunity to step into this position. And it's been such a blessing being in this region, really understanding the cultural continuity that exists here in Arizona. There are 22 federally recognized tribes within the state of Arizona. So it's wonderful to be in such, I call it Indian country. And it's really an honor to be at the helm of a museum where our sole purpose is to serve as stewards to these wonderful artifacts.
Did you have a connection at all to the museum before you got the job, or you just found out about it and applied? I guess Ed can fill us in on.
Well,
was it a big competition for who became executive director after Ken left the job? How did that?
Well, I can't really talk about that very much because I heard about Monica after she was there.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And
Yes.
but I did say to Ken Zoll, how did you manage to get Monica to be hired as our executive director?
How nice. Thank you, Ed.
So did you have a connection before?
Yes, I always network and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
and my work has taken me all across, I call it Indian country, all across different museum spaces, and connected with my predecessor, Ken Zoll. So as always, just staying in touch with people, and admired the work that he had done to establish VVAC, and his enthusiasm and zest for the archaeology was totally contagious.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that because so many of our volunteers were inspired by Ken Zoll to help support this mission and what have you.
So Betty, how's she doing so far?
She's doing good.
Yeah. The first question I put her on the spot, right? So Ed, when you gave my wife and I the tour the other day, we found out about this person who is probably seems like the most interesting character in the development and the history of the museum, an artist named Paul Dyke. Tell us a little bit about him, his significance to the museum, and what his connections were to the local tribes in the area were.
Okay. Well, Paul was actually born in 1917 in Chicago. He went to Europe, and while he was in Europe, he met a Lakota Sioux man named One Elk. Mm-hmm. So when he came back to the States, he decided he wanted to go visit One Elk. So he was in Chicago, probably saved his pennies and took a trip to South Dakota to meet up with one elk. And that was beginning of his affiliation with tribes directly. So he lived with Lakota Sioux. He married one elk's daughter, who unfortunately passed away in childbirth a couple of years later. But he continued to live with different tribes, and you can see that influence in his painting. And he collected a lot of Indian items while he was there, not artifacts, but gifts that were given to him. And a lot of those are on display up in Wyoming. But eventually he lived with both the Navajo tribe and the Hopi tribe here in Arizona. Heard about a ranch in Rimrock that he wanted to buy called I think it was Hole in the Wall, or Hole in the
Something like
Wall
that.
Ranch, yeah.
Not hole in the head.
Well, not Hole in the Head.
Right.
But he bought that ranch, and on that ranch was a dwelling that had never been looted, never been flooded. It was right on Beaver Creek. Had partial roof collapse, so things were just very well preserved in there. He had it professionally excavated between 1962 and 1972, and then in 2014 he actually gave all those artifacts and all those notes to the Archaeology Center. So we have them all, and we've cataloged them all, and many of those are on display. But just as importantly, or perhaps even more importantly, the Paul Dyke Foundation supports us financially as well. So it's a tribute to him. Our laboratory and repository are part of the Paul Dyke Collection Center, which is part of the Verde Valley Archaeology Center. So that's kind of the premier exhibits that we have. And just to know that those items came from just a few miles away, I think it really affected me quite a bit when I realized that.
It sounds like if the center opened in, I guess, 2010, right? And he donated that stuff in 2014, did that exponentially increase what you were able to show and have at the museum at that point?
Yeah, when I first got involved with the Archaeology Center, we were on Main Street in a very small space, in a very small repository space. But a lot of that was devoted to the artifacts from Paul Dyke's site.
Wow.
And they just, there's such an opportunity when displaying those and talking about those to learn about the people that lived here.
Right. So in terms of, this may be jumping ahead, but in terms of what you have at the museum and what you continue to bring in, given this area, and that's very focused on Native American artifacts of the tribes that were from here, do you still find things all the time? Do you still have people digging the area to increase? I mean, that kind of is the fascinating part to me. Like imagining all those little crews of people, with all their equipment running around and still finding stuff.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stephen, for asking, because this is wonderful to clarify to listeners, is we do not participate in excavations. The archaeology world kind of stays away from the word dig, and we use the word excavation.
Except for children's magazines.
Yes, and that was wonderful. Thank you for bringing those issues over, because we have them in the children's room now.
That's
so
great.
I appreciate it.
I'm glad they found a great home.
Absolutely. And so we have a survey crew. So our volunteers, since we're a multifaceted museum, not only do we have the galleries, the repository, the collection center, I forgot to mention that we have a Native American ancestral heritage garden, approximately 9 acres. It's off-site from the museum. It's on Homestead Parkway, closer to Highway 17 in Camp Verde. All the information's on our website. And it's approximately 9 acres. We have archaeology that was excavated and then backfilled in is kind of the method that people do in the field, as well as a wonderful post-colonial and pre-colonial garden. And Rob Estrada is our ethnobotanist, and he's wonderful for the work he does there, and we have volunteers just for the garden site. But going back to the survey crew, so in fall and spring, we have a survey crew led by Dr. Graceffa and Keith Greiner, and they go out onto Prescott National Forest land. And Prescott National Forest is like 1 million square acres. It's massive. And so we have a contract with Prescott National Forest where our survey crew goes inch by inch, foot by foot out in the field and they document whatever they come across, whether it's a metate or perhaps a dwelling site. But what it is to survey the land because it's so all-encompassing. And Prescott National Forest is limited by staff, so that's where our volunteers step in to serve as a survey crew. They map everything via GPS mapping and their coordinates. So everything is going to be recorded for the future. And please know, nothing is put out online, so you don't have to worry about metadata for specific sites that are discovered. Everything's confidential, because that's also another issue is we love archaeology. We want people to know about the rich cultural history here in the Verde Valley. However, how do you visit with respect? And it's really important not to get certain information out on the internet. You don't want someone to vandalize anything.
Right. That's great. So I'm going to bring Betty, I'm going to bring you in a minute to talk a little bit about the Grand Canyon stuff. I think you happen to be the knowledgeable person about that. But first, I need to talk about my sponsor, and then we'll bring you in. So This is my sponsor is Karen Cole, State Farm Insurance agent based in Camp Verde. She's my sponsor until the end of June. I'm sure everyone out there would agree that it feels good when you make the right decision, like when you choose the perfect song for a special moment, or when you choose to have a good night's rest after a hectic day, or you choose to go to the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum. It's all good. As good as making the right choice on insurance. That's why Karen Cole is a State Farm agent and serves the Verde Valley in northern Arizona to help you choose the protection you want at the price you want. Karen will explain everything about your coverage with State Farm so you know what to expect if the unexpected happens. With Karen Cole, it is easy to make the right decision. And I know because Karen handles my home insurance. She is the one insurance agent who is all about protecting the things you value and the people you love. So contact Karen at www.kcoleinsurance.com or call 928-567-3374. That's 928-567-3374. Like a good neighbor, Karen Cole and State Farm are there. So, Betty, you're up. Tell us a little bit about the museum's connection to the Grand Canyon and what the Grand Canyon contributes to the center.
Well, the Grand Canyon exhibit that we currently have in the museum is in the first exhibit hall that you go into. Monica and our curator met for many times with the repository up in Grand Canyon and selected a number of articles to bring, many of which have never been on public display before. We have the exhibit divided into 3 different time periods, archaic, indigenous, and historic. The archaic is the first display that you see. It includes something called the basement rock of the Grand Canyon. It's the oldest rock. It's billions of years old. Mm-hmm. It's from the bottom of the canyon. We also have the skull of a giant sloth in the case. It is a 9-foot-long animal that is currently extinct, but we believe it was supper for the American cheetah, whose jawbone was also found in the same cave.
Wow.
People
you're not going to find that stuff in ancient Egypt.
No, you don't find that in ancient Egypt. And I always tell people, when you see the American cheetah, don't think of the one that's over in Africa. Think of a mountain lion, short, stocky, and muscular. The indigenous has a couple different items in it. One that I always point out is a bowl that has holes that were pre-drilled in the base of the bowl prior to it going in the fire. It was used as a sifter, whether it was for sifting seeds or putting a chunk of salt in with some water to salt food or other items. We're not quite sure. And then the historic one, there was a gentleman, his name was I.C. Reese, and that's about all we know of him. He was either a hermit or a prospector or both. We don't know what. Mm-hmm. But he made this cache of a box that was waterproof and had items in it with a note. If there's anything in here you can use, take it. If you have something to share, leave it. Don't squander anything. Mm-hmm. He had playing cards, a pipe and tobacco, a sewing kit, and then someone at some point shared a bottle of beer wrapped in a prohibition pamphlet. Someone had a sense of humor with this. We have twig figures, which Europeans first thought were children's toys, but the Hopi, who are descended from these people, tell us that they were actually offerings for a hunt. They're animals that they would have been hunting, and we actually have a twig figure that has a spear in it, which goes along with the hunt idea. But the really neat thing is that we were able to bring all these items and put them on display. The Grand Canyon wasn't able to put them all on display, so many of them have never been seen by the public before, and it's part of our rich heritage of the state, of the people who lived here before, and to be able to share that with our visitors and get them to also go visit the Grand Canyon with a better understanding of what happened before, that it's not just a big hole in the ground.
Yeah, and that's
Well, also speaking to that, Betty, and Betty is a wonderful docent at the museum. Sometimes,
you can tell she's got the info down.
It's amazing. Sometimes she'll be with the same tour group for 2 hours going through the space. So thank you, Betty, for your commitment. But also going back to the Grand Canyon exhibit, really essentially what we wanted to do as a museum is bridge the two worlds. The Verde Valley is the ancestral territory for the Hopi, and they still have the Verde Valley within their territory as well, but also the Grand Canyon, the emergence from the Grand Canyon, from my understanding. Yep. And so how do we connect the two worlds? Because we see the geographic distance, but it's not really much of a distance. Yeah. And the sophistication of the trade networks from Grand Canyon to Verde Valley and, both routes. Also, Kim Beeson is the curator there at the repository, and she was phenomenal to work with. She was so gracious, so open, and it was such a treat to go up to the repository to visit, and that's part of the fun with being in the archaeology world. It's the unexpected and having access to places that it's just a dream.
Yeah.
And we were also grateful to work with Lloyd Masayamtawa. Lloyd is the superintendent for Montezuma Castle National Monument, Tuzagut, and Montezuma Well here in the Verde Valley. So Lloyd is of the Hopi tribe, so it was wonderful to have him come up for a visit and co-collaborate on the exhibit as well.
Yeah.
So, and have his take.
Yeah, so Ed and Betty, sorry. How long have you guys been involved with the museum, and what made you gravitate towards it, and how you got so devoted? I mean, I know, Ed, you said you've been fascinated by it since you were young, like a lot of people are. How did you guys get into this?
Well, excuse me. When we retired, and then I needed something to do.
Right. But, as we all do, right, at this age.
but to recultivate that interest in archaeology was certainly one of my goals. I had already started volunteering at Montezuma Castle.
Right.
That just piqued my interest even more. So I'd met Ken a couple of times and stopped into the museum to see what they had, and just amazed at the quality of the materials and the diversity of the materials. Things that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And then it just means so much to be able to learn about these people.
And did you bring Betty along for the ride, or she was just as interested as you were?
She started on her own independently, but it certainly was appreciated.
And how long have you both been involved with the museum at this point?
You started in 21. I started in 22.
Okay. Yeah. So not since the beginning, but
no.
But you have the knowledge, as I found out on Thursday, and I'm finding out about you, Betty, now. The knowledge that you have and the way you can just reel off all the information seems like you've been there since the beginning.
Well, it helps when you repeat it over and over
That's
again.
right.
That's true.
I bet. So here's a question for you. So this center and museum is really specific to this particular subject in this particular area. One question would be, how many other archaeology centers do you know of in the country like this that's so subject specific? And the second question would be, is there a goal to expand, like what subject you cover over time, so it goes way beyond what you're doing now? I don't know if those questions connect.
That's wonderful, Stephen. Yeah. So really, everything has been so globalized the last 20 years in the cultural institutional landscape and so forth. So VVAC stands apart in it essentially because we're so regional specific.
Right.
We want to keep it community level. We want to keep the integrity of our collection for the Verde Valley and the peoples who have inhabited the Verde Valley and the descendants and the modern day tribes of the Verde Valley. So we really want to preserve that as much as we can. And so we get so many wonderful offers from members or what have you, whether it's collections, and how does that fit within the narrative of the scope of the work we do. We're also limited by space, even though we just 2 years ago we moved into this fabulous new 11,000 square foot museum space. We did total renovations and everything. We're already bursting at the seams. And so is our repository. So we're very careful what we collect and curate. And also we have to adhere to NAGPRA, which is the Native American Graves Repatriation Protection Act, and we have done so, and in accordance to the new guidelines implemented by the Department of the Interior. So we're very restricted with what we collect, what we want to collect, and so forth, because we have a real estate problem. It's a good problem because of all the interest, how everyone wants to work with us, the different Forest Service, NPS, donors, members, and so forth, other institutions. For example, we have a beautiful retrospective of Paul Dyke, who we have his archaeology collection, but he was also a famous painter here in the Southwest, over 100 solo shows at different galleries, and the paintings are exquisite. We have one on view from Scottsdale Museum of the West, several on view from Tucson Museum of Art, as well as private collectors. So for us, you know, the collaborations are wonderful, and we want to continue these collaborations. We want to evolve them, and we want to continue more collaborations with Hopi, Yavapai, and Apache, because they're tribes that have been severely overlooked. And we just hope that we can rectify it, and also on their terms and what they want to be shared from their cultures.
Right. So I'm the one who did the archaeology magazine for kids, but it's my wife, B, the woman warrior, who wanted to go into the kids' adventure room and play around in the sand. So
not unusual.
Yeah. So that was kind of fascinating when we went in there. Tell us a little. Who wants to tell us a little bit about that, Ken? I mean, Ed, I'm sorry I keep calling you Ken.
That's right. I've been called a lot worse.
It's the one syllable thing.
Yeah.
Our children's adventure room has the most unique thing in there is a sandbox.
Yeah.
And that sandbox has a projector above it. And it's special sand, so that projector can sense how deep you've dug in to the sand, and it displays different artifacts. There's 3 layers. So the first layer, there's actually 4 layers. The surface layer, it has things running around. But if you dig down a little bit, you might discover a Coke can.
Yeah, we found one yesterday.
And that'd represent the historic.
I'm glad it was Diet Coke.
It was Diet Coke.
That was actually my Diet Coke can years ago when we were creating the software for the virtual sandbox.
Is that right?
Yes, my Diet Coke can was used. So it lives on in perpetuity. So ridiculous.
In the future, you're going to have to upgrade to Coke Zero, probably.
Yes,
something like that, right? Go ahead.
But we dig down a little bit deeper, and you'll start finding some Native American artifacts. So you might find a piece of pottery or something. And you dig down even further, you might discover a fossil. So the kids just love playing in the sands, and I have to admit the adults do too.
Well, my wife was digging so deep and so hard yesterday that some of the sand almost ended up on the floor in the room. I mean,
and that's not unusual.
She found some fish fossils, right?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And then other things in that room that sometimes don't get all the attention they should. But I'll tell you a story.
Go ahead.
we had a family come in, and it was a young man, probably about 9 years old, and we have a loom in there. And he saw that loom, and he said, "Oh, we did this in school." He sat down, and he wove things with that loom for about 15 minutes. He was just thrilled. But we have some artifacts there that the kids can look at nice close up and personal. Just a lot of different things to keep them occupied, even some, I think there's even some drawings. I think
Yeah.
And there's the Pueblo.
There's a Pueblo in there with it has a scavenger hunt, which nobody can agree on the right answers. But
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was doing the magazine a while back, one of the features that we had in every issue was a project. How to create a piece of pottery at home. All these kind of different projects. Kids love learning that way when you can get them to be interactive with the material.
And we do have so many children's and youth workshops at the museum. And since we're, even though we're the official nonprofit partner to the National Park Service and as well as Arizona State Parks, we do not receive federal funding or state funding.
Right.
We're an independent museum, so we solely rely off of donors and our members and everything. If we do receive federal funding, it's for a specific research grant or something to that effect. So for us to continue our children's and youth programming, that's actually all donor-funded programs because we make the programs available pro bono. So that way it's accessible for families in the Verde Valley for their kids to participate. And also we always welcome the parents or the guardians to come with the children so they can have that participation together. So that's really what we are at our core is we're serving the Camp Verde community as well as the greater Sedona Verde Valley community. And to do that, we have to keep the costs down for our visitors and our workshop participants because there is a barrier for museums. And how do we make something welcoming where someone will feel like, well, I can do this children's workshop for my kids because I don't have to pay $20 a child to do the workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciated some of the notes that you sent me when we were preparing for the show. And one of the things that really caught my eye, I wanted to talk a little bit about the volunteers. The museum has 47 active volunteers, which is kind of phenomenal, including museum greeters, docents, and the laboratory personnel who have a really important job, obviously. And in 2023, this was a great stat. Volunteers completed 7,500 plus recorded hours, and if each volunteer was paid $20 per hour, it would cost the museum $150,000 in salaried pay. So it's amazing that you can get people that devoted to the subject and the work.
Well, I'm hoping you and your wife will become volunteers.
I don't know if she should be a volunteer because she'll end up in the kids' room all the time.
Well, that's good. That's all right.
So Betty, so tell us about the volunteer activity and what everybody does and how impressive that is.
Well, my main activity has been acting as a docent. So I take people. Typically, I'll start them off with the video that Phil did of his mural of the Hopi story of their emergence and their migration. And then I always let people decide if they want to have a docent-led tour or if they just want to wander on their own, and I just catch up with them on various points and answer questions. So there are people like myself who do the tours. There's other very devoted people who we call greeters. So they're the ones that work the front desk and they do the sales in the book. We have a bookstore and we have some gifts and we have kids things. We have the really cute mini Lego kits that people really like, and they do mean mini. These are very tiny Legos.
Yes.
And then we have the Lab Corps group that meets on. Typically, they're there on Mondays, and then some of them come in a couple other days of the week. But they get together and they just do phenomenal work going over artifacts that are brought in. Dr. Jim is well known for his work on pottery, and his wife Diane is excellent on textile. We have 2 master weavers who are volunteers and work on our textiles, and deciphering, trying to figure out how things were made in former times with limited means. It's a real mystery, some of these pieces, how they actually pulled it off. But they're all vital to the continuing work of the center, and being able to explain to our visitors what's going on and what happened here for hundreds of years before European settlers coming in and changing the landscape.
Yeah, that's great. So how do people become members of the museum? And also, like, I know you have business memberships. You have a lot of sponsors that contribute. Tell us something about that.
We rely on our members critically. We have member hikes, member excursions. We have a phenomenal hike leader, Richard McGaw, who also does work with Museum of Northern Arizona. And if you're familiar with Southwestern culture, most everyone knows Richard as a figure for hikes and excursions. So we have that for members. Of course, we have member and donor receptions. We have kind of behind the scenes access as well. And of course, our talks. We've done several events here in Sedona. We worked with Patrick with the Sedona Film Festival.
Patrick Swice, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pat's wonderful. And we had an Indigenous Film Festival last November. It was 2 days. And recently we had a partnership with one of our business members, Courtyard by Marriott here in West Sedona.
And when you do those events, they're fundraisers?
Absolutely. Yeah. To the penny, it's a fundraiser.
Right.
And really, we're just limited, and there's so much growth, so much we want to do, and so much we currently do. And you gentlemen were speaking about wearing a lot of hats earlier in the program. Well, we all wear those hats,
I bet. Yeah.
you know. And the wonderful thing is the volunteers just gravitate to the museum. And I'm in their debt because they lift me up as an executive director. They lift up Ed as board president, and, you know, Betty is wonderful with helping out and everything. So they really take their positions onto themselves, and really I give them that empowerment where, no, you're going to be treated as staff. You're going to have a staff title and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so our organization just runs so efficiently because of the members who are so enthusiastic, the donors, but especially the volunteers.
Yeah. Ed, as a docent, and Betty, you might answer this. When somebody comes in and wants to do that, what's the training period like? Like, how long, if you come in and you want to do what you do in giving tours, how long does it take for somebody to get up to speed and be able to do that?
Well, as not only board president, but also the interim volunteer coordinator.
Right.
Talk about wearing multiple hats.
Right.
But what I usually do, if somebody's expressed an interest in volunteering, I usually meet with them probably for an hour and a half at the museum. And we explore all the different possibilities, everything from the lab and the survey crews to greeters and docents, and even working behind the scenes in the office. So we sit down and we explore those. And then depending on what their interest is and their background, for a docent, they may come and just follow around some of our experienced docents for time, maybe several sessions till they feel comfortable. And we have a lot of reading material that they can do to even gain more knowledge. I find that our docents all have their own favorite stories.
I bet.
So when they do that, they're encouraged to steal.
Yeah, how far away from the Verde Valley do the volunteers come? Like, do you have Sedona people?
Oh, we have people coming down from Flagstaff down to Camp Verde, Prescott. We have this one lady who comes up from Phoenix twice a month.
Wow!
So we welcome anyone, and you don't have to have any prior knowledge of archaeology or anthropology. We're very hospitable, and just so people know that all of our volunteers do not have an archaeology or anthropology background. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it fantastic, is it's a diverse group of people with skill sets from all different backgrounds and professional knowledge. So that's what we need as an organization, is people who have talents from all different sectors.
Yeah. How often does Indiana Jones come up when you're taking people around?
Yeah. Well, who doesn't like Harrison Ford, right? You know.
Talk to the woman warrior about Harrison Ford. It's one of her favorites.
Yes.
Yeah, but everybody kind of thinks that Indiana Jones is what archaeology is all
Right,
about.
right. Well, I wish that was the case. It's just a lot of paperwork.
Right.
And fundraising.
Exactly. So, what has maybe there's not really an answer to this, but has anything come into the museum recently that you all went, oh my God, I can't believe we got this, or this is amazing, or is just everything pretty much cool, and nothing's really more exciting than the next thing?
I think what it is we're also respectful of any artifact that comes through the door, whether it's an ancestral artifact or historic archaeology. So, for example, something that's 200 years old, 100, or even 80 years old. So we're all just so respectful of that. And I think for me, what a lot of people love is in the Yavapai Apache Nation Gallery, we have the most wonderful video of Mr. Vincent Randall. And sadly, Mr. Randall passed this last December 2023. And I just adored him as a friend and what he did for his people, his community, and just his entire life's work was for the Yavapai Apache.
Yeah.
And not only them, but for so many other people across Indian country.
Right.
So it's a great video of Mr. Randall, approximately 45 minutes. That's in the Yavapai Apache Nation Gallery. So whenever I'm going through the museum space back and forth to my office, I always smile because I hear his voice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. I'm glad you brought up the thing about years of things, because Ed, I think you can help with this. One of the first questions I asked when I came in and you were taking us around was, what is the period that most of these artifacts cover? And I don't think we talked about. Can you mention that?
Yeah, excuse me again.
Okay.
Our concentration is really from the years of around 600 AD till about 1400. That's the time of the Hopi ancestors living in here.
Right.
And then the Yavapai and Apache there was an overlap and extend even to today. So there's artifacts in that area. But it's the artifacts in the Paul Dyke Center are really from that time period and more up 900 to 1325 or so.
Right.
The artifacts just tell you so much about the people that lived here.
Of course, yeah.
We have pieces of cotton that were woven. We have a cotton ball. It just learns so much about these people and find out that, wait a minute, they're much like us. They enjoyed games. They had great skills. I cannot even understand how they did some of these things. If I were pressed to reproduce it, I have no idea how to start.
Yeah.
So those are the things that really impress me. And that time frame, that 600 AD, that's about the time that this... you'll hear them called the Sonawa culture or the Histostodome culture. That's the time of that culture developed here in the Verde Valley until 1350 to 1400.
So is there a time period cutoff point where if something comes in that you carbon date or you research and it's, this is really like from 1600, so we can't take that? Or
Well, that's open for discussion with our repository committee.
Because I know that was always
Yes.
an issue with the ancient European archaeology,
Yeah.
that they had kind of cutoff points where, and they're kind of snobbish about North American archaeology. Right? I learned that when I was doing the magazine. It's like, if it's not from ancient Egypt or Greece, it's not archaeology.
Right. And of course, one of the things that's great with, the advancement of science and everything is finding out actually how long the timeline goes
Right.
for occupation here in the Americas. But everything is always open to discussion. We have a repository committee that makes the decisions on what we accept and acquire. And we have certain guidelines.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's currently the big exhibit or the big exhibit coming up when the summer's over, as you reminded me?
Well, we actually have an extension for Grand Canyon because it was so well received statewide. And we just have such wonderful receptions. We're still doing programming off of that. But for the summers, most museums are in the Southwest. It's our time to regroup for fall, winter programming. And we have so many exciting things coming for fall, so stay tuned. However, we are on a summer hours schedule, so we're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Check our website for details. Our Native American Heritage Garden is open to the public dawn to dusk, and it's really at its peak and full bloom and glory right now.
And remind us what the website
Sure, it's vvac.org.
Got it.
And so there's so much wonderful things. And of course, coming this fall, we'll be doing all kinds of collaborations. We have lectures, speakers. So stay tuned.
What's the goal, like, really long term? Like, what's your wish list 5 years from now, or whatever?
It would be first and foremost financial sustainability
Right.
is really at the crux of everything, especially for a regional rural nonprofit, is really just financial sustainability. Everyone assumes that we have this beautiful space, so we must be flush with cash. And the point of the matter is we're always just month to month really being so careful of everything we do and mindful of absolutely everything. So we, like I said, we couldn't do anything without the volunteers. And also just the further collaborations. The more means we have to grow financially, the more the collaborative work can be, because we provide honorariums for all of our speakers and presenters. For our Native friends and constituents, we provide honorariums, so we cannot do the work and the outreach without compensating our
Right.
colleagues.
Right.
Yes.
Have you ever had a chance to expand the physical space? Is there area there where you could do that? Or
Well,
would you
I
have
guess
to-
we could go up. We
Right.
could do like a second
Right.
floor. Because I think about that every day, Stephen.
I know a couple of guys that work for Mellow Mountain Radio are very good at construction.
Yes. No, we definitely need to expand. You know, our space is voluminous as is, and we have a fabulous meeting room space where we have our lectures and so forth. However, we're running out of room to accommodate all the interest. So it's like, okay, well, what wall can we knock down and so forth, so that way no one gets turned away. There's always a seat for someone. That's really important too, that everyone knows that there's a place.
Yeah, Ed showed us the archive. I guess it's the repository.
The
repository space, which was kind of fascinating. I guess, you know, there are items in there that you'd really like to be able to display if you had the room, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but,
that's
you
great.
know, I always think the future. So anything's possible, and we're going in a great direction with wonderful people that are here with me, Ed
Yep.
and Betty, and all of our volunteers.
That's great. So, well, this has been a great conversation. We're toward the end of the show, so I have to give a shout out to my sponsor again. You know, folks, switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on lights, we switch TV channels, we sometimes switch up some of the foods we eat. But did you know that you can switch your insurance and also save with State Farm? In fact, State Farm agent Karen Cole, who serves the Verde Valley in northern Arizona, can switch your insurance coverage, whether home or auto, so you can start saving today. Karen and her team based in Camp Verde are ready to welcome anyone in the Sedona and Verde Valley area to the State Farm neighborhood. With Karen Cole, it's easy to switch and save. Just contact her at www.kcoleinsurance.com or call her at 928-567-3374. When you want the real deal, Karen will protect the things you value and the people you love. And like a good neighbor, Karen Cole and State Farm are there. So, folks, I really urge you to check out the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum, which is on the center and the offices are on 460 West Finney Flat Road in Camp Verde. As Monica said, their summer hours are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., with the last admission at 3 p.m. What's the schedule after the summer, Monica?
Oh, then we resume to our standard operating hours. That's Tuesday through Saturday.
Great. Well, I want to sincerely thank all of you for being my guests today. Monica Buckle, Ed Goodwin, and Betty Goodwin from the Verde Valley Archaeology Center and Museum. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you,
Thank you.
Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks. Tune in again next Saturday morning, June 22nd from 9 to 10 a.m. when the show theme will be Good Works, Feeding the Hungry in the Verde Valley, with my in-studio guest, Kathleen Healy Bayaza, Executive Director of the Sedona Community Food Bank, and Ben Burke, Executive Director of Manzanita Outreach in Cottonwood. Thanks again to Ryan Thompson and my show sponsor for the month, Karen Cole. You want Karen as your agent because she protects the things you value and the people you love. By the way, tell your friends who couldn't hear the show today they can listen to the podcast version on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Thanks for listening to Red Rock Country's Radio Magazine.
Westwood One Sports presents this special report on the 124th U.S. Open Golf Championship, sponsored by Staybill. At every fill-up or when you store, start with Staybill. Visit staybill.com for more information. The last player to win a U.S. Open in his tournament debut, Francis Ouimet at Brookline in 1913, the so-called greatest game ever played. Lots of game left at Pinehurst, but Ludvig Åberg of Sweden, making his U.S. Open debut, has a one-shot lead on Saturday. The 24-year-old is happy to be here.
To be able to play these tournaments, to be able to play with the guys that I watched on TV for such a long time, is definitely a pinch-me moment, yeah.
Åberg at -5, Bryson DeChambeau, Thomas Dietrich, and Patrick Cantlay all at -4. Åberg and DeChambeau playing together today. Rory McIlroy is 3 under. With this report on the U.S. Open, I'm Whit Watson, Westwood One Sports.
Want to keep your gas-powered engines running like new? Stable's proprietary formulas are proven by third-party testing to outperform the competition in keeping fuel fresh, preventing corrosion, and cleaning the entire fuel system. With Stable, you can have confidence you are doing the right thing for your engine's long-term health. Just pour into your gas can or fuel tank, then top off with fresh fuel. At every fill-up or when you store, start with Stable. Available where fuel additives are sold.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has plans built just for you. Like 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. Switch today.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary.
Get ready to calm your mind, body, and soul right here on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM, KAZM, Sedona.
The following program is a paid presentation. The views and opinions expressed within this show are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of KAZM.
Welcome to the Sedona Soul Sister Show. Down-to-earth discussions on spiritual, metaphysical, paranormal, and healing topics. The Sedona Soul Sisters are the most trusted psychic mediums in Sedona. They have offices in Sedona, Arizona, where they see clients from all over the world. And now, today's show.
Would you like to learn simple yet powerful practices to overcome burnout and energetic overwhelm, helping you as an empath feel more energized, balanced, and in control of safeguarding your sensitive soul? You're listening to or watching the Sedona Soul Sisters Show, where we share psychic guidance and healing for embodied spiritual awakening. I'm Christelle Arcucci, and I'm on a mission to support spiritual practitioners to access your intuition, unlock your psychic gifts, and live your purpose. A big thank you to all our listeners all over the world, and a special shout out and boost of love to our listeners in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. You can schedule sessions in West Sedona or virtual psychic readings, meet your angelic guides, starseed readings, Akashic recodes, soul contract work, Reiki, life coaching, and more at SedonaSoulSisters.com. Each breath you take aligned with love repairs the healing web on planet Earth. Burnout and psychic gifts don't necessarily have a direct connection. Burnout is a chronic state of stress and exhaustion resulting from prolonged periods of excessive physical, mental, or emotional demands. It can affect anyone regardless of whether they have psychic abilities or not. However, for individuals who possess psychic gifts or are empaths working in fields that involve intense emotional labor or energy work, burnout can be a particular concern. Here are the ways that burnout can impact empath and those experiencing a psychic awakening. Energetic depletion. Practicing psychic abilities such as clairvoyance, mediumship, or energy healing can be energetically draining, especially if not managed properly. Without adequate self-care and boundaries, psychics can